there are people out there watching. The dozens of them, I'm sure, if not more than that. Hundreds. Well, that's awesome. Well, if everyone's okay with it, I'm going to start off with a prayer, because we're here in the church, we might as well, right? Dear Lord, thank you for bringing everyone here today, either in person or online. Thank you for having a community church here, having a place where we can get together and we can share our testimonies, where as a group of people we can do more and we can be more. I appreciate the things you've done for me, and I hope you can give me the courage to make it through all this without losing it today. Thank you. Amen. Well, I didn't actually put my name in a PowerPoint because I've got issues with self-aggrandizement, but it's up there now. So my name is Matthew Mitchell. I have a feeling that most of you only know me as the guy that plays guitar on Sunday morning, if you know that or have noticed that. I put up here, and I don't know that I can't read that, but I don't have to, because it says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path." And I actually used the King James Version of that because I'd memorized it as a kid, and when I looked it up to copy and paste it into this PowerPoint, it didn't look the same or feel the same to me, so I had to go back and find the old one. I am the elected public defender for this district, and Pastor Sean actually asked me to come up here and give my testimony several months ago, and I declined. I said that I really felt uncomfortable speaking to the church while running an election. It felt bad. It felt like I would be here asking for votes. And now that that's passed, he's asked again, and so I don't have an excuse. If you want to, okay. I grew up in Erin, Tennessee, and that is actually a picture of the Mitchell Tabernacle in Camp Garner Creek, which is the local Nazarene district camp retreat. That's named after my grandparents. I grew up in a town, 9,000 people, and everyone there knew my grandmother by the name of Meemaw. Didn't matter if you were her grandchild, a person that she'd taught at school, everyone knew. And Bob Mitchell is my grandfather. And so I'm going to give a little bit of background, because without the background, the testimony doesn't make a lot of sense. If you want to go to the next one, after being raised in the church and going through school, I went to Austin Peay and I got a degree in physics. I got married. I married my wife Lauren, and we have 2 children. One of them's supposed to be doing soccer, but I have a feeling it got canceled. And my daughter Haley, that's sitting here. But after going to the school there, I worked at TVA, and I decided I didn't like that and went back to school, and I was part of Belmont's first graduating class of attorneys when they started the Belmont College of Law. And as that concluded, my testimony, or my story, kind of begins, because at that point, I was I think I was 28 years old. I had 2 small children. I'd graduated, but anyone that graduates from law school, you got to pass the bar. It's a very difficult test. It's very nerve-wracking. As I was going through preparing for it, I started having trouble reading. I couldn't see. I went to the eye doctor and I got glasses. Thought, that's weird. To back up a little bit, I had LASIK while I was in law school, and some of this, I don't know what caused what happened, so I don't like to blame people. There's a possibility that the LASIK did this. It's a possibility I had something going on beforehand. Either way, about 6 months after I had it, I was studying for the bar. I got glasses. It did not help. I thought maybe they'd got the prescription wrong, and I decided to kind of soldier on. I needed the time to study. I didn't want to go back to the doctor. And I went through, I took the exam, and started what I think is the worst part of every attorney's life, which is the period between taking the bar and waiting to find out if you failed it. Because you don't know what to do. Do you go work? Do you start preparing for the next time you have to take it? I mean, if you failed it, are you going to take 3 months to do nothing? Either way, I spent my time at a doctor, and we can go to the next slide. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but that is the difference between a regular cornea and a cornea of someone who has keratoconus. And I don't like those pictures, so I drew my own if you'll go to the next slide. That, I think, is a better description of what's happening. The top one would be what a normal eye would look like. And all the little lines are the light or the image coming in. In the back of your eye, there's a macula, and the light comes in, it all gets focused down to this tiny point in the back of your eye that is 99% of your sight. The outside edges are like for night vision and peripheral vision. Keratoconus is Latin for cone-shaped cornea, and my corneas had stopped staying the way they were supposed to. I was going to Vanderbilt. Every 2 weeks they were giving me new contacts. They told me I had 14 months. Sorry, that's wrong. They told me I had 24 months before I would be blind. And that's a rough thing to hear when you've got a lot of student loans and you just got out of law school and you've got 2 small children and you're trying to, find your way in the world. I'd opened up my own practice and I'd resolved to try as many cases as I could, and I'd just be a blind lawyer. And I was going to work this out. It was going to be okay. And it didn't take it 14 months. I went to the judges. I said, I need to try as many cases again. They knew what was going on. They knew I was losing my sight. I tried 3 trials before my first year of being a lawyer, which is a lot, because I know a lot of people that have been a lawyer for 10 years and never tried a case. And I did it because I knew that if I didn't, I might not be able to. If you want to go to the next slide. Everyone starts off and they say, well, what does blind mean? Were you unable to see? The picture that would be on my right, your left, is a classroom. It kind of shows the progression there. But the one at the top, the moon, that one's the one that feels the most real to me, because I remember it so distinctly. I would go outside, I'd look up at the sky, and because of the way the light was being scattered in my eye, I wouldn't see a moon. I'd see moons. And I'd look to read. You can see down there at the bottom, you got the A, that's the normal one. That's the second one. There's kind of the beginning, but as it goes on, it gets significantly worse because you're starting to see images of the image that you're seeing. So the first few pictures don't really show it as well as the moon does, because the moon's so far away and such a big bright light that you can kind of tell what's happening there. You can tell you're seeing the images hitting different parts of the back of the eye. If you want to go to the next one. I go back to this because I'm proud of it, and I'm just showing that where that bottom one is, and it's hitting everything. Imagine one image of the moon coming in, but depending on where it hits on my eye, it's going to hit a different part of the back of my eye, and so it's going to end up being backwards. We can go to the next slide. The big problem, though, was that after about 14 months, Vanderbilt said they were done. They said, we've been giving you contacts every 2 weeks, and giving's a really tough word to say because it's not really giving. They were selling them to me for a lot of money, and they said that it's not working, and you're done. And the next step for you is going to be to wait till you're 40, because you can get corneal transplants, but if you get corneal transplants, there's a good chance they're not going to take, your body will reject them, and then you just won't have eyes. So you'd rather have blurry vision where you can at least kind of get an idea where you're moving around than no vision. And they wanted me to wait till I was older because you can get 2 corneal transplants in your life and they tend to last around 6 years. So it was only going to give me some sight from 40 to 52. But they decided at that point that I was done. And went to get another opinion, because why would you do that? You don't want to just Just lay down and take it. If we go to the next slide. This is what I thought I was looking forward to. And at the time, I thought I would hopefully find somebody else that would help me. And I think the big picture of this entire conversation, which I'm moving way too fast, is that I haven't really talked about where I was at with God with all of this. I continued to go to church. I went to church my whole life, taking my kids to church their whole life. And I'm not a very public person, which is funny as a public defender, but I didn't want people to know what was happening. I didn't tell anybody. And I remember when Vanderbilt called and they said, don't come back. No, we're not going to set you up another appointment. I called my mom and I told her what was going on. I mean, I was 30 years old. I was a man. I didn't need to talk to my parents about it. So I said, hey, I want you to know that tomorrow I'm going to go to all the judges and let them know I can't be a lawyer anymore. I can't read. They're taking my driver's license. I know that y'all have known I've had some really bad headaches for the past year or two, but they're saying that they're going to move me into a category of legally blind, and I guess somebody else would drive me. My law partner at the time said he would drive me down to the courthouse, and the judges very graciously told me that if I wanted to show up, that they would give me cases, which in retrospect is terrifying, because the idea was going to be that I would walk in to talk to a criminal defendant and say, what'd they charge you with? No, seriously, read it to me. And I imagine that wouldn't have inspired a lot of confidence. But I told her, Mimi, my mom, and she said, can I go to the church? I know you haven't wanted to talk about it, but can I ask them to pray for you? I said, why not? Everybody's got to know soon. Can't hide it now. I mean, I'm not exactly walking around with a stick, but I had attempted to walk around, but it was overwhelmingly obvious when I couldn't tell who you were until you started talking that there was a problem. I have friends of mine that say I would frequently talk to the side of them, depending on where they were sitting. If they were sitting to the side of me, I would talk to that side of them. And if they were towards the front of me, I would talk to that side of them because that's where I thought they were. And I never got to deal with it. They got to live with it. They said it was very off-putting. Also, because of the way that they were trying to fix my eyes, they were bloodshot red. Not like, oh, you didn't sleep last night, like your eyes are bleeding. So I frequently wore sunglasses in the building because I didn't want people staring at, blood red eyes. And I told her that, and I remember it was a Thursday, and then she went to the church, and they prayed about it, and on Tuesday, I got a call from Jake Lockhart. Some of you may know him. He is either infamous, notorious, or at least well-known, and He's the public defender that has retired that now I'm in his spot. And he said, hey, we got somebody retiring. You should come work for me. Well, he didn't know. I'd worked for him as a law student, but as a private attorney, I'd moved to Montgomery County. I've been working in Montgomery County the whole time. And I said, well, I appreciate it, but I can't read. So I'm going to have to tell you no. Don't think I can do it. And he said, I'll get back with you. Then on that next Thursday, so 2 days later, he called me back and he said, hey, I've talked to the state, and under ADA compliances, we have to provide you with a driver and a reader, but if you want to come work for me, we'll take care of you. And I said, yep, that sounds like a great idea. I think I'll be a public defender. I think that I will go and defend people that some people may find less desirable. And then I prepared, told everybody what I was going to do, had to have that tough conversation with my best friend in the world and say, hey, I know we wanted to be lawyers and we're going to be law partners, but I kind of got to take this. They're going to take care of me. I know you said you'd pick me up and drive me around and stuff, but I'm going to have to end the partnership, and that was tough. The next day, that Friday, I got a call out of Indianapolis. And because I'd went and tried to get a second opinion from Dr. Ming Wang, they had put my name into a list, and they called and they said, hey, your name just came through our list, and we think you'd be a great candidate for a surgery that is experimental at the time. And that is a very bold way to call it an experiment. It's a surgery that had been being done for 30 years in Europe. The reason it's not done here was politics, because there's a chance my eyes were hurt doing LASIK, and they don't want people to think that LASIK can hurt you, so they didn't even want to be able to do the surgery that could correct something that went wrong during LASIK, which seems a little cold-hearted. But in order to get into the experimental surgery, I had to go to Indianapolis, I had to pay out of pocket, and I had to agree to do it without pain medication. And that was exciting. That'll be a story for another day, though, if anybody ever wants to have a conversation about how that went, because it was not ideal. And but it worked. I came back here. I had my surgeries. It took 2 or 3 trips, took 2 or 3 surgeries, and then over the course of about 6 months, there's actually only one place in the state of Tennessee that sells the kind of contacts where they're called scleral contacts. And I think I'm supposed to have hit a button here some time ago, because I wanted to put this back up here and say I was very upset because I had been a good person, and hit the next slide. And I tried really hard to get to where I was. So before I meant to say all that before I talked about talking to my mom, because it's truth. And there's a lot of bitterness that comes from feeling like you've always done the right thing, but things aren't happening the way you wanted them to. We can go to the next slide. Which is why that I started this off with trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Because it's not about, my testimony is about, this is part I'm struggling to get through, so I didn't trust him. I thought I could do it. I thought I had earned it. And it took one phone call. It took one time being humble enough to say, whatever, you can tell them if you want to. Thank you. And what even me? You know, my mom trusted him. My mom said, well, I know how to fix this. I know who can fix this. And that's the thing that's hard to explain to someone, is that
This isn't a person who, this isn't Saul becoming Paul. I'm not saying I was some bad person. I'm not saying that I didn't believe in God and this transformed me. I'm saying that sometimes doing all the right things is not enough. Sometimes showing up ain't enough. Sometimes just taking your kids to church ain't enough. You have to believe. You have to trust. I have a good friend of mine, and he works for me, and I said, hey, Wayne, they asked me to come talk to the church. What's a good Bible verse for being pig-headed? He said, you should look at Proverbs. I said, I remember that. That's a good one. That's a good example of someone who just thought they had all the answers. I think the next slide is just a picture of my family, and I started this off by saying that I was going to talk about my personal tragedy, and said that I think that's a bad way to put it, because I've had it really good. And I know who did it. But I think it's important to tell people what happened, because we have a lot of people that are suffering. We have a lot of people that are going through things that are just out of your control. You can't think, I'll make this work. It's not about I. You got to follow the path. I was talking to, and I'm sorry I forgot your name. No. Diane. And I was trying to explain that I'm the public defender, not. She said, oh, I thought Ray Crouch tried that case. And I said, oh, he did. There are times where being the public defender is a little bit less than glamorous. It is a position where that, not all my clients are innocent. Most of them are. That's a joke. Most of them are not. And they know it. And I tell them, and I say, look, you confessed 9 times. They caught you with the stuff you stole. And then you said, I'm sorry, I just wanted it. We're going to have to try to work you out a deal, which is the majority of the conversations I have with people. But I do get to do a lot of good. As a public defender, we own and run the drug court, and we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get back to their families. People that are just destroyed by addiction. We send people to rehab all the time. I tell everyone that works for me that your job as a public defender may be to be the last person that's willing to pretend that you think they're actually going to do well at their rehab this time. Because most of the time, by the time they're coming to me, everyone's given up. Their mama's quit paying for it. Their grandma's quit paying for it. They think, we've lost them. And it's easy for me to think that too. But it's my job to go in there and say, I think they need one more chance. How about one more time, Judge? This time it'll be different. And some people just need that one more chance. And I don't know if that's why that I am where I'm at, but I know I'm supposed to be here. So I will take questions if anybody has questions. Anybody?
What's the status of your vision right now?
I am at 20/20 in my left eye and 20/40 in my right eye,
Yes.
which is incredible because legally blind's 2200. And when I went in to do my surgery, I couldn't read the big E. So if you look at an eye chart, that's where I was at.
Was there a medical reason why you could not take pain medicine?
No, there was just we need to make up another reason to do experimental surgeries. Otherwise, people can't get it in the United States. And they were testing a local painkiller that was an eye drop. So where most people would go out, or they would take a lot of anxiety medication and then take a general anesthetic and then do some kind of numbing eye drops. I had some eye drops. And they took the thing, the scalpelars, whatever, they pried my eyelids open. And they took the thing they clean your teeth with. And they went, it's called corneal cross-linking. If anybody knows how to draw, you got cross-hatching. So they went this way, and they went this way. And then they poured collagen into them, and I stared at a black light for 10 minutes. So my eyes are pretty much just scar tissue, but they're not changing shape anymore. And they can correct the vision. The problem was I would go to Vanderbilt and I would get a pair of contacts and I'd be able to see kinda for about a week. And then they would change shape again. And glasses don't help in any way because it's a shape of the eye issue, not a lens issue. So, anybody else?
Is this a permanent fix?
Hope so.
Good.
Got my fingers crossed.
Yay.
They think it will be. I think that it's safe to say at some point in your life, your corneas and your lens harden, which is why that as we get older, we end up needing reading glasses. Your lens is able to be stretched, and you can see things that are up close and things that are far away because of that stretching. And then as you get older and it kind of hardens as with age or whatever the issue is, you either can see really far or you can see really close. And a lot of people can see a medium distance and they can't read, so they go get readers. The process that I went through kind of stopped that. You know, there is no movement. And so I have good vision on average. But like I have, my computer screen still has words that are this big, you know. It's a good fix. It's a whole lot better than at the time she was playing soccer, and if you can imagine, she's done really good at brushing her hair right now, but when she doesn't brush it, it's a giant, like, tangled mane, like a lion's mane, you know. And she was the only girl on her team. So we go out there, and when the first season she played, I knew who she was. She was the girl with the big hair. The second season, I couldn't tell which one was the girl with the big hair. And that was pretty depressing. Mm-hmm. There were some low points, and realizing that you can't see your kid play and probably won't ever again was tough.
Do you still have the ADA accommodations?
I don't.
Yes.
I could, but I don't.
I'm sorry. I just praise the Lord when things like that happen.
It's worth it because it would have been if I had thought it through better, I could have waited 6 months and probably got all my student loans dissolved and then got everything fixed. But hindsight is definitely 2020. So, but I've been here. I love what I do. I really do enjoy it. I've had at least one really innocent person that I've represented. And we went to trial on it. They charged him with murder. He had shot a man. But
we'll just say the facts were overwhelming that it was self-defense. But the family of the victim disagreed strongly, and so we ended up going to trial and it got a full acquittal. So if I never do anything else successful as a lawyer, I know I saved one person who just defended themselves and deserved to win. And, and for the most part, our job is not to try to get a guilty person to win. It's to go in there and say, hey, look, they've charged this guy way too much. He's guilty. Trust me. I've talked to him. And I've done that before to juries. It's just, look, I know you think we've wasted your time, but we're only here because he's not as guilty as they're trying to make it out to be. It's not that bad, which is typically a huge win because our sentencing structures, now the jury doesn't get to know it, but they're typically super, super top heavy. Like if you get an A felony, you go to prison for 15 years, 100%. And the difference between an A felony child abuse and an E felony child abuse is one of them's 2 years probation, the other one you go to prison for 15 years. And I've had a client who dropped his daughter. She broke her arm. And we had to go to trial because he was looking at going to prison for 15 years. And I had to say, is that really the outcome that this daughter needs? To wake up every day for the next 15 years and know that she's the reason daddy's in prison. And that's just our system. And, I've also had cases where I've had family members and friends never say they'll never talk to me again. I represented Joseph Daniels. I've been cussed out on the street. I've been, I hate the media. I hate the fact that everyone can watch everything we do on the internet. Because nobody gets to know what's really happening. They don't actually get to hear what's going on, and they don't know that what we're doing helps everyone. I tell people having a public defender is the difference between America and, Soviet Union, Russia. Nobody gets sent to a gulag without having a trial. They have to prove it, and I'm going to make them prove it. Now, sometimes they do, and sometimes they really, really get hammered. And I've had clients get 150 years to serve. Probably deserved it. But our job is not just about protecting their rights. It's about making sure that victims know justice occurred. They know they found the right guy. This wasn't a situation where they said, it's you and you're gone. We're not actually going to look into this. We're not going to do our investigation. We're not going to prove our case. By the time the trial's over, if I'm on the other side, the state is going to have done everything they can to show everyone in the room this person's guilty. And they better prove it. Now, I can tell you historical examples. I know when Martin Luther King Jr. When Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, something like 40 years later, the family hired a district attorney, a judge, a jury, a defense attorney, and then somehow managed to get Congress or whoever it would be to let it's not James Earl Jones, it's whatever his name is, the guy that shot him, James Earl Ray. They got James Earl Ray to come out, and they didn't have a courtroom, so they rented one, and they tried him again, and surprisingly, they found him not guilty, which is what the family wanted. But the point is that they didn't feel like he was guilty. His attorney withdrew 2 weeks before trial. The judge literally picked someone off the street that was a local attorney and said, you're going to represent him 2 weeks from now. And so his trial was a sham. Now, is he guilty? I don't know, probably. The family didn't think so. But if they'd had a good defense attorney and they had made the state prove their case,
and they had made them go do everything, then I think even the victims are happy that the defense attorney's there. And I've been surprised at how many times I've had people after cases come to me and tell me that they were glad it was me. I have a hard time raising my voice. I have a hard time yelling at people. I've been very successful with just asking people nicely. And it helps, because sometimes when I'm talking to them, they realize maybe it's not as bad as they thought it was. But I'm rambling, and you put me in front of a microphone, I'll keep going.
I have two things to ask. First one, where do you see God's hand in your story? Sorry. Where do you see God's hand in your story?
To me, it's, I don't, I looked at talking about Job. I don't think that counts. I've had it way too good to be anywhere near that. But I know that what I went through was a trial, and what I went through led me to where I'm at right now. And it was so overwhelmingly obvious to me where I went wrong, because it was not but days after I went to my church. And the part of it that I feel, at least the message that was to me, was it does take a community. You should be proud of what you've done with your prayers. You should be proud of how you've helped people. And you shouldn't be stone-hearted and say, I hadn't done anything wrong, and I'm going to get this fixed. I'm working, I'm making good money, I'll go pay every doctor I can, they'll fix this. But the minute that it was asked for, it was given.
And my second thing that I want to ask you is, does your clients know that you're a Christian?
Yes.
So yeah, I just would encourage you, because even though you are defending the worst and the worst of criminals, you are probably the last testimony to them before they go behind the bars. So
Thank you. I think that there are times where people just refuse to believe someone has changed in prison. It's hard. It's hard to look at somebody that did terrible things and say, oh, they found Jesus. It's difficult to forgive. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But I watch a cycle. It happens every time, where I'll get appointed to somebody, and it's like the first week they've been in jail, and they are the meanest, hardest, cussingest, angriest person you've ever met, and you're wrong. Everything I say to them, I'm wrong. No, they're not going to go to prison. They're not. No. You're going to fix this for me. That's your job. You're my attorney. And they've called me every other bad word and name, because I look at them and I say, look, I don't have to be your friend. And I'm not trying to impress your mama into paying me. I'm here to tell you what the law is. And I'm here to make sure you know that your rights are being given to you. You are not being treated unfairly. The next stage in this is going to be to go up to the big boy court, where we can do, circuit court, which is where you can do your trials and stuff. And I'll get all your discovery, and if there's anything I can do to fix it, I'll fix it there. That takes about 2.5 to 4 months, depending on when they get arrested. And by the time that I talk to them again, they are so different. They've been sober for the first time in 5 years, and they've been sober for 2 months, and they come to me and they say, I should have listened to you when you first talked to me. I should have just went ahead and pled this out as a misdemeanor. I know I did it, and I told them I did it. I don't know why we're going up to it, and I wasted all this time. And I said, what you're going to do is you're about to tell me how that you've missed your kids for 2 years because you've been in an opium den. I mean, they're not really opium dens anymore, but they're flop houses with people doing heroin. And you have missed everything. And guess what? 5 or 6 months from now when you violate probation, you're going to be yelling at me and cussing at me again. Because unless you want to go get help, unless you want to turn your heart over and realize where you're at in life, you'll be right back. You want to do it right now. You want to do what's right. You want to be there for people. But when they take those chains off, that freedom's going to taste real good. And unfortunately, I've had that conversation millions of times, it feels like. Probably hundreds, if not thousands. But I've talked to a lot of people, and I've told them that. And typically, I get to see them again. But sometimes I know I haven't seen her in a long time, and I'm afraid that she's passed away. But I had a young lady. She was probably 26 or 27, and I didn't represent her. I represented her co-defendant. But in the local courthouse, we're pretty rural. I'll call it that. Unsophisticated. So we're sitting there. We're just on the bench in the room. I mean, everybody's sitting there in the same room. And I'm whispering to my client because that's the closest thing to privacy we get. And I go and I sit down next to this lady, and she has been living in a tent, and it's January, and she had to have weighed 70 or 80 pounds, doing heroin. I think we can all guess how she was getting money for it. And her co-defendant's sitting on this side of me, and she's over here, and I'm whispering to her. And the co-defendant goes, hey, you think I should get me an attorney too? And I looked at her and I said, I wouldn't worry about it. You're right, you'll be dead in about a month. About 6 months later, I saw her at a grocery store. She had went to a rehab. The way that they treat simple possession is it's like a 2-day charge. You're back out on probation and you're gone. You're there for 48 hours and then you're free to go. And I knew both of them were about to be out. And I saw her, and I was going through, I won't say where, but I was walking up and down the aisles, and I noticed someone peeking at me, And I thought, oh, here we go. Someone's about to cuss at me in the middle of a grocery store again. And turned the corner, and she was actually she worked there. She had a shirt on that was the store logo on it, and she walked up to me and she said, are you Matt Mitchell? I said, I go by that name sometimes. And she said, you saved my life. She said, I was in such a dark place, and no one would tell me. No one would be honest with me. And you looked me in the face and you said, if you keep going the way you're going, you'll be dead. And you meant it. And she'd been sober. She went to a 28-day treatment, which I can't believe was enough to work. But she'd been sober for 6 months, and she'd gotten a job. She'd been given supervised visitation to her children for the first time in years, and she was very, very thankful. And I saw her off and on again at that store for about a year. I haven't seen her for a while. I'm very hopeful that she moved to a new area to get away from bad influences. That I'm gonna try to maintain that, though I'm a very realistic person.
And it's great, sometimes people have change of heart. And talking of Paul, I'm reminded of how he was persecuting Christians. It was Barnabas who brought him to the group and said, he's a changed man now. And guess what? That man ended up writing more than half of the New Testament.
Yeah. There's a man, and if this is being recorded, I know he would love for me to say it, but his name's Doug Beecham, and he was one of the worst felons we ever had to deal with. He's got more felonies than most anybody I've ever dealt with, and for the past 20 years, he's been the director of our drug court, and he's a wonderful man, and he's helped thousands. He went from being a guy that ran a pawn shop and stole from anybody that would get away with it, an alcoholic and a heroin user, to one of the best people I know. And I mean, you know, there are a lot of people that I've represented that I wouldn't trust them with my pen. If they get outside, I know it's going to be stolen, much less my wallet or my car. But Doug comes to my house anytime he wants to. I know he's changed. And I know it's Jesus that did it.
I have to tell you, we had a women's meeting Saturday, and I did the devotion, and it reminds me of you. It was about Jesus. You can't just pick the things you want him to be in charge of in your life. You have to give him all of your life. You can't just say, I'm going to let you do this, and I'm going to take care of this, and I'll let you do this, and I'm going to handle this.
Yeah.
You just have to turn your whole self over to him and let him have it.
It makes me happy.
Yeah.
And the reason it makes me happy is because it reminds me that I walked in here on Sunday morning and we had a guest preacher, and he talked about opening your eyes.
Do you really want to open your eyes? Yes, he was good, wasn't he?
He was very good. And the whole time I was sitting there, my wife looks at me and she goes, "Did y'all work this out?" And I said, "I have no idea who that man is." Yes, ma'am. There's someone with my...
I'm half Baptist, but anyway, what I wanted to know is, you can hear me. I'm a loud mouth.
Well,
You
there's
know
people,
that.
people on the internet that need to hear you.
Do you know if there's any prison ministry going on at Cheatham County? I do
Yes.
prison ministry at DeBerry Special Needs Prison, and I've been wanting to find out if there is any prison ministry
Well-
going on at Cheatham.
So I was the assistant public defender for Cheatham County for about 3 years, and at the time, there was a guard who was also a preacher, and he also worked at what's called the Hope Center, which is a faith-based rehab here in, well, they're all over the place, but there's several of them in this area. And he drove me crazy sometimes because I've had him recommend people to go there that... I had a guy one time, he had federal bank robbery charges and was going to go to prison for at least a decade. And this guy told him he could go to the Hope Center. I should just give him a furlough. And I said, that's never going to happen. Maybe talk to me before you start telling somebody that they're going to get out of jail and go to rehab, because you can't rob a bank with a shotgun and go to rehab. And but I know that they're there. I know that I get calls from them. I know there are several people in the Dixon County Jail that are working with all of them, but specifically they work with the women, because there are some loving, motherly people that know that these addicted women are pregnant and they're about to have babies in prison that are going to get adopted. And unfortunately, it wouldn't be, for most of my clients, it's not the first time. And so there are definitely some people doing...
Who would you contact if you... Do you think they would let a church group come in for a chapel
Absolutely.
service?
Absolutely. I'll tell you, right now there would be a struggle between... They're still under some serious COVID restrictions. The county has to pay for any medical bill that happens in the jail. And they still have some very restricted things on visitation in general, because if you get half a pod that has COVID and you have to take them to the emergency room, the county's out $100,000. And so they don't want that.
they already have to do a whole lot. Like if you're arrested, you have to stay in your own, you get your own pod or your own, you're in a group with everybody that got arrested that day for 14 days because they don't want to spread it out to the rest of the inmates. And so they've already broke ground, but they're building a new
I know
jail.
they don't have room over there, much room over there, I know.
Right now they don't, but the new facility's going to have it built in. They're going to have meeting rooms
Oh,
there.
will they have a chapel, you think?
But they're going to have meeting rooms.
Okay,
They won't be a chapel, but it'll be a place where you can host AA, NA meetings, which are,
right.
and I think the sad part about AA and NA is most people don't know what it is because it's anonymous. But it is a very faith-based organization.
Oh, I know it is. I know.
And they
Believe
are,
me.
you know, that is something that as a drug court, we make everyone sign something that says you better understand all of our processes are faith-based. And if you have a problem with it, we will comply because we have to. But you're going to sign something right now that says whether you have it or not. So we can, I mean, it's not going to change whether or not they get accepted. But almost every successful rehab process, and I say that because there are certainly people that have been successful without it, but almost every one of them is based around God
True.
and finding
Absolutely.
where you're at.
Here you go, lady.
I got one behind.
Has there, on times that when you did go to trial or you met that certain person, you just felt in your gut, you knew that what they done was, bad, bad, bad. And if it is, and if you did any like that, how did you get over that?
That is honestly one of the questions I get asked more than anything else. And the answer is, I treat every one of them like they're all guilty. And that it's my job to make the state prove it. That way, when I do get the ones that I know are really, really, really guilty, the state doesn't know. I don't tip my hat to them and say, hey, you better win, but it's easy for me, I'm a very objective person, to look at the situation and say, I either don't know 100%, but even when I do know 100%, it's my job to make them prove it, because if there's not someone standing there forcing them to prove it, then when the guy that's not guilty comes in, they're just going to get ran over. So you got to fight them all. And unfortunately, that means sometimes I've represented people that I've known deep down. If I don't know that I should say this, but what's the matter now? I've had clients where the outcome of their sentencing hearing, like best case scenario, was 25 years at 100%. Worst case scenario was 250 years to serve. And I woke up one morning and I was headed out to one of those, and he was a bad man, and he deserved anything they could give him. And as I'm getting dressed, my wife walks in. She says, where are you going today? I said, well, I'm going to go lose, but society's probably going to win today. And there are a lot of days where I feel that way, because sometimes there's certain ways you get a public defender. One of them is you don't have any money, which honestly is rare. It's a drug addict, it's a homeless person. A lot of our clients fall in that category. But the ones that go to trial, they got to us the other way. And the other way is, you did something so bad that when you went and talked to an attorney about it, they said, I ain't touching that. You know what? I'll do it for $150,000. Because they can't discriminate. They can't say, you seem unsavory, go away. But they can say, you're going to make it worth my time. And then they get the public defender because they can't afford that attorney. Because most people can't afford to pay for an attorney for murdering a child, or for raping a child, or for posting terrible images on the internet. And we get all of them. We get the worst. And I tell people, you either laugh or you cry, you know, and but those are my people, and I'm going to take care of them. And sometimes those people aren't very fun. But I go down there and I talk to them, and I shake their hand, and I tell them I'm going to do everything I can. And I do, because that's what I'm paid to do. But I'm also probably the only person that they're going to see that isn't going to be a nightmare for the rest of their life. Because most of the people that I represent like that, they do lose. And my job becomes standing next to them and saying, yeah, that's how that works. He's allowed to say that. He's allowed to tell them what you told him. They can play that video. You know, I can't stop them. And that way they know that they weren't railroaded. They weren't mistreated. I do what I can to win. But sometimes you just can't. And, you know, the people like that, I try to tell myself, when they leave, when I'm done, they know who I am. They know the example I'm trying to set. They know that I was honest. They know that I never told them I'd come see them and didn't do it. I never told them, hey, we're going to win because it makes you like me better. You know, it's a tough barrier to get over, but by the time that you're done representing somebody that's super guilty and you've told them the whole time, look, we all know where we're at. They've talked to 2 or 3 attorneys, and those attorneys have been like, look, man, you get your mom to come give me $25,000, and you're going to be way better off with me. And it would be easy for me to look at them and say, you should get her to hire him. It'll be one less problem for me. But I don't. I say, I've tried more cases than anybody besides Jake Lockhart in this district. There's one guy that comes down here out of Nashville that's got more on me, but I've tried 80 cases. I have lost 9. And the reason that is because when I talk to my clients, I say, no one can win this. And don't let them lie to you. You got to know that you're going to ruin your family. You can't mortgage your house 3 times because you can't win this. Stick with us. We'll give you the best representation of anybody here. And hopefully when this is over, you won't have ruined everybody else around you. It's Houston, Dixon, Houston, Humphreys, Stewart, and Cheatham. It's 5 counties. Of course, I grew up in Houston County and got family in Waverly. And of course, Houston and Stewart, they're like cousins that hate each other, right? But we moved here. Our kids go to school here. They'll be from Cheatham County. Just my place. And I think what I do is important for it. So I'm going to do it the best I can. I got one last thing because it's 7:59 and I'm going to not take any more questions, but I'm going to just say this is the other question, and I've gotten it from at least one person here, is
are you doing this because someday you want to be a judge? And the answer is, no, I'm doing this because I know it's what God wanted me to do. And I will continue doing it until he says otherwise. So, it's 8 o'clock, school night. And actually it's not, it's fall break. But thank you all for coming.